I thought I'd share a testimony of one of the reasons why I became a Christian. Um, in the um, I was around 20 or 21, and although I'd been brought up going to churches, my family and um, me and my family, that we'd all stopped going to church, even though I'd been brought up going to churches from a young age. Um, for one reason or another, just it's not like that we didn't believe or anything. It's just we just stopped going to church and drifted away from God anyway. At the very least, drifted away from God. Well, anyway, at age I was yeah, I was living in what you would say in sin, in a relationship with a lady who I was engaged to, and we were living together, and it was really obviously not a godly relationship, and it was wrong. And I remember one night hearing on the TV or on the news that the moon was going to turn a red color, and all my I guess my memory about the last days when Jesus would return was that the moon would turn to blood before he'd come back. And I remember thinking, oh no, I'm living in a wrong relationship, and just all really fearful. And anyway, I what had happened was I had bought um, I'd gone out looking for a car, but before I went out looking for a car for myself, my fiance had said, "Can I borrow $800, I think it was, to or $700 to buy a car?" She was short on some money to buy a car, so I lent her the money, and she went out and bought a car. And then I thought, yeah, I want a car, so I went out and I bought a car. I drove it round to someone and showed them the car, and was a Fairmont gear, and I was thinking, yeah, this is awesome. Fairmont gear, red, big V8. Anyway, I drove it home, parked it up, and that was the last time it ever went. The motor seized, and I'd have to say it was the most horrid car you could ever buy. It was probably the worst car. I bought it at an auction, and I bidded on it, and I was wondering why no one else was bidding on it. So anyway, I got it for um, about $1,800, I think it was. Paid for it. Um, so anyway, I get home, and it never went after I drove it on the way back from the thing. Showed it to my friends. Got home, and it never, never went after that. Oh. And so it was it was the worst car ever. Okay, as I looked at it, and more I looked at what was wrong with it, it had a list. I had a sheet of paper, and it had a list just going down the sheet of paper, just huge problems with it. All the tires were bald. Um, the seats in it weren't actual bolt. The seats in the car weren't actually bolted down. They all were just loose in it. The seat belts weren't actually bolted in. The dash and the actual all the dash and everything, nothing was bolted in. It wasn't bolted in. Um, it was just horrid. Nothing worked. It had no lock on the boot. It just, yeah, and the motor seized. It was just the most shocking. It had a nice paint job. That's about the only thing going for it. A nice paint job. So I didn't do my due diligence and actually just check it out. I just bought it. It drove up into the auction, and I just bid on it without even looking at it beforehand. And so I was absolutely a fool. Um, I got it home, and yep, that was the last time it went. So it was parked up in my driveway, and I was quite depressed. I just spent my most of my money. I'd given most of my money to my fiance, spent the rest of my money on this car, and I realized it was going to cost um, thousands of dollars to fix to even just be able to drive it. And I was wanting to have a car to drive to work with, and so I was very depressed. And then they're saying the moon's going to turn red. So I sat in this car, I was sitting in it, looking up at this moon, looking at the moon with the change of the colour. It wasn't red like blood, but it was, it was an orangey look moon. But it was apparently rare. It didn't happen very often, this moon turning this colour. So I was thinking, oh no, this is it. Jesus is going to return. I'm living in sin. My car doesn't work. I've got no money. I'm going to go to hell. This is just terrible. I used to be a martial arts instructor as well. I was thinking, I'm teaching people martial arts. I'm just evil. I'm just so bad. God's going to just judge me, and my life this is terrible. I've got a miserable life now, and my life after when I die is going to be even worse. And so I was sitting in the car looking up at this moon. It had rained, obviously, previously that week, and my car had leaks, I found out. So it was even worse because the water had come into the car and it had filled up in the driver's on the feet of where the driver, and I had a couple of inches of water in the driver's where you put your feet drive in the driver's side. So it filled up with water, and my feet were in this water in this car looking up at the sky. I mean, this car was so bad that the windows, it had electric windows, but actually the electric motors for the windows make them go up and down were taken out. And what they had done was they'd put blocks of wood in the doors to hold the windows in place. When I tried to unwind the windows or put them down, blocks of wood had fallen over and these windows just fell down. So it was a nasty car. It was the worst car you could possibly. I don't even think it was a car, if it really even met the description of a car because of what was wrong with it. But anyway, I'm sitting in my feet wet, looking at the sky, going, "Oh, Jesus is going to return," and I prayed. Okay, I was in a state, and I prayed, and I asked for God's help. Okay, so that was the context. Yes, I had got to financially stressed, emotionally stressed, and yes, I was in a prime place to call out to God for help. So I cry out and pray, and I talk to God, and I said, God, please help me with my car. I've got no money, and I told him, and I just prayed an honest prayer, and told him about, I've got no money, I spent all my money on my car, and that was it. Now, I mustn't have given my money already to my girlfriend. I must have still had some money. I think I must have had about $700 or something. Because, it must have happened after that. Because what happened was, she said, let's go shopping for a car for her. Yeah, so she must have got her car after me. That's right. So we went shopping, and she was looking at this car, and she thought it was really good, and they told her how much it was. And she said, I need some money, and I said, oh yeah, and I had the money. I gave her the 700, so that was after I bought mine. That's right. And it was the last amount of money I had at the time, and gave it to her, and she's talking away to the lady, and her husband was there, and she was talking away, and the husband was saying, oh, you know what I really like? What I'd really like, and I was actually in a place, I wasn't in a really good headspace, because I was like, I don't really care what you want, man. I was really bummed out that I had no car, and I was really broke, and it was just, life wasn't going very well. I was really depressed. Anyway, here this guy's going, oh, you know what I'd really want, and he kept going on, and I wasn't listening to him, and I was just going, yeah, whatever you wanted, and he just kept talking and going, and he said, I'd like a Fairmont gear, and I was thinking, oh yeah, Fairmont gear, yeah. He said, and what I'd really like is a Fairmont gear that's really, really bad condition, and to do it up. And he's going on like this, And then I finally went, I thought, oh, like, hang on a minute, I've got a Fairmont gear. So I said to him, oh, well, if you want, I've got a Fairmont gear, and it is really if you like doing up Fairmont gears from scratch, my car is perfect. It is a shocker. It's the worst Fairmont gear you could ever buy. And I told him that. And he said, oh, well, I'll come around. He was a mechanic. He said, oh, I'll come around tomorrow and I'll look at it. And I went, what? like amazed, eh? So I went, oh, yeah. And he anyway came around, yeah, like the next day, and he looked at it, and I had the list of paper with all the things I'd found wrong with it. It was a huge list. It was huge. And I had said, I'm going to be completely honest, and I'm not going to try and hide anything from this guy. I'm just going to tell him straight as the worst car. And I told him, I said, this is the worst car in the world. I think it's the worst car you ever buy. This is what I've found wrong with it. It is just so shocking. And he said, oh, it's exactly what I want. I love doing up cars. It's exactly what I want to do. Yeah, I'll take it. And he said, how much? And I said, oh, you make an offer. I was willing to take anything for it. And he said, how about $2,500? Okay, and he wrote a check for me and gave it to me, and I was looking at it going, what? Like, what? You're paying me $2,500 for that piece of junk? And I went, oh, okay, sure, because, honestly, it's the worst car ever. But he was so happy. He was so happy he got his Fairmont gear, exactly what he wanted. And he paid me the $2,500, and I got the check, and I banked it straight away. And honestly, and then I realized that it was exactly the amount I had spent on my car and given to my girlfriend was exactly $2,500. And I realized God had answered my prayer that night when I was sitting in the car. He had answered it in a financial way that proved to me that He existed. So I thought, wow, He exists. Has to be a miracle that someone paid $2,500 for that heap of junk. So I thought to myself, well, He clearly exists because I prayed and He answered my prayer and helped me. So what am I going to do about this? And I thought, well, I can't live in sin anymore. So I told my fiance, I'll move out. I'll move out and I'll live at home, and we'll wait till we get the marriage day. And when we get married, then we'll move back. Then we can continue and move back in, and no hanky panky, no naughty stuff. And I wanted to be pure and do everything right because God had answered my prayer, and I thought, well, if He's going to do that, if He's going to be real, He's real. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do with my life. So I moved out, like I said, and moved in with my mother, and and my fiance actually ran off with another guy, and so I lost my fiance. That was a bit sad. And I started going to church, and the first day I walked into church, I said to God, I said, look, God, if you're real, okay, I'm going to come into church, and if you're real, okay, I'll do anything you want. I'll do whatever it takes. If you're real, I'll do anything for you. I'll dedicate my life for you. But if you're not, if this is just going to, I've got better things to do for Sunday. I think I said to him, I've got better things to do on a Sunday than go to church if this isn't the real thing. If this isn't the real deal, I'm not interested. So I basically was honest with him and said, look, if it's real, I'll do whatever you want. But if it's not the real thing, I've got better things to do on a Sunday. And I don't know if that was disrespectful or not. It was just honest. I was trying to be honest. Anyway, I went to church. My first time back at church. Remember, this is after I hadn't gone to church. My family had left. I had left going to church, and now I was an adult, and I knew I was making a decision about whether I was going to follow God or not. And this was the real crucial moment. He'd answered my prayer, got my attention, and I had tried to do the right thing. Moved out from my fiance, wanted to do the right thing, and so now I end up going to church. I go into church, I walk into church, and it was a big church. They were holding 2 services in a morning. There must have been 1,800 people in each service. It was a huge church. Anyway, I go down near the front. I was very brave. I wasn't scared about anything when I was didn't really know any of that. Should have sat at the back, you things, or something like that. It's inconspicuous. But anyway, I went right down near the front, a few rows from the front, near the front, and I sat down and listened to this, this message. Anyway, this message, this guy's preaching this, and all this, and someone, like I'm sitting there watching in front of me, and someone puts their hand on my head like this, and I, being a little paranoid, wondering why have they stuck their hand on my head, like, why have you stuck your hand on my head? So I thought, don't freak out, because my martial arts skills, normally I would try and disarm them or something, grab them wrist or do something. Anyway, so I was thinking, don't react, don't be violent or react or anything, don't freak out, don't jerk around or anything, just slowly turn around and find it and look at who's put their hand on your head and why are they doing it. So I thought, and it felt like the hand on my head was like a pat, like, well done, pat, well done. And it was, I could feel my head, and so I thought, just turn around and have a look. So I turned around, slowly had a look, see who had the hand on my head, and there was no one sitting in the row behind me. That, like, for a large area, no one sitting there at all. And I clicked, I went, wow, that must have been God. It must have been God putting his hand on my head going, well done for coming to church. That's what I thought it was. And I thought, wow, first day at church, and already the Lord, Jesus, is, come on, has visited me. Now, well, it could have been an angel, patting me on the head. I don't know who it was, what it was, okay? It was definitely someone patting me on the head. I would say it was an angel, okay? That's probably my more than likely. If it was Jesus patting me on the head, awesome. That would be awesome. But since I don't know, all I know is it was spiritual. Even while I'm telling you right now, I can feel the Spirit of God landing, resting on my head, right across here, resting on me right now. Right now, you can't see it, but I can feel it. It's awesome. Anyway, it happened, and it was like, I thought, wow, this Christianity rocks. This is amazing. It's got angels. I'm having an encounter with angels on my first meeting to church, and man, this is just so full on. And so my spiritual life at the beginning of Christianity was quite an adventure for me. It was a bit like a roller coaster ride. There was just so many things going on spiritually, and it was like, for me, it was very real. Okay, I didn't know that wasn't the case for most Christians. A lot of Christians don't have that, but that was my introduction to Christianity, and I thought, man, this religion rocks.